and the newscasters are up to no good, with Alex Kack.
And Edgar Zotov.
Coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. And first, the local headlines.
Hundreds celebrated the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today at Reed Park. The free event started with a march by activists, followed by dancing, singing, music, and food. And yesterday, the University of Arizona and the Tucson community joined together at Sentinel Hall to celebrate the civil rights leader with a multimedia presentation. These events are noteworthy not just because of their content, but because of our state history. In 1986, Arizona Governor Bruce Babbitt created a paid holiday by executive order to remember and reflect on MLK's legacy, but his Republican successor, Evan McCamm, reversed that action when he took office in 1987. We even lost the chance to host Super Bowl 27 because Arizonans voted against making MLK Day a paid holiday. But finally, Arizonans realized they wanted a paid day off more than they wanted to be outwardly racist. The public passed a referendum in 1992 that approved state-level recognition of MLK Day. Alex?
Arizona lawmakers are split down party lines in regards to repealing the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare. This parallels federal lawmakers, with Republicans supporting a repeal and replace platform, while Democrats want to keep the law. The U.S. House of Representatives approved a vote for repeal on Friday, with 227 to 198 vote. This vote occurred one day after the Senate approved the measure. In both cases, all Arizona Republicans voted for repeal, while all Democrats opposed the measures. However, Representative Martha McSally said that while she voted for the measure, she is concerned about providing an effective replacement. But she said that Obamacare is collapsing under its own weight and needs to go. Arizona Democratic Party Chair Alexis Tamron said that Arizona Republicans should be ashamed of their vote because it would take away Americans' health care in order to score political points.
And Arizonans are worried that Governor Doug Ducey has been taken over by progressive zombie. Ducey has released his executive budget, and it includes an array of additional funding for education. The budget included $453 million for education over 3 years, $5 million to bring broadband access to rural schools and increase funding for public safety and corrections. This includes $13.6 million for a yearly raise for teachers, averaging out to about $800 per teacher, making $40,000 per year. However, the $800 is spread out over 5 years. Senator Steve Farley says this isn't enough to retain teachers in Arizona who have been fleeing the field or moving to higher-paying states, which is pretty much every other state. Farley said that the amount ends up being about a $15 a month raise for teachers. Farley also criticized how the increase will be funded. He says that $90 million comes from the Highway User Revenue Funds, which is supposed to provide funds for roads. Ducey's budget also grants $19 million for all-day kindergarten for districts considered low income. It also raises the so-called grandmother stipend by $1 million. The grandmother stipend is money given to grandparents who care for their grandchildren rather than having them sent to foster care. The proposed budget for 2018 is 1.8% bigger than the last year and totals $9.6 billion. Since announcing the education increases last week, Ducey has shocked the state with an uncharacteristic progressive spending agenda. The press grew skeptical, though, when Ducey said that he just wants better education, safe streets, and brains, lots of brains. Alex?
PayPal and ASU are going green to the tune of $90 million. The two have entered a deal with the Arizona Public Service Company to purchase their equivalent output in solar power from the Red Rock Power Plant just outside Tucson. PayPal's share of the 40 megawatt capacity plant will be enough to cover about 75% of the power used at their Central Phoenix data center. The electricity generated at the plant will not actually power PayPal or ASU directly, but that won't stop local U of A frat legend Fat Ronnie from taking a dump on one of the solar panels.
Tucson's average gas price rose nearly 7 cents last week, But things could be getting worse. State Representative Noel Campbell wants to increase the state gas tax by as much as 10 cents per gallon. The state could use the revenue for the road maintenance it desperately needs in some areas. But 10 cents per gallon is going to be a hard sell, especially given the fact that the current tax rate is 18 cents per gallon. The tax hike would require a 2/3 majority in the House and Senate, or a simple majority to get the issue on the 2018 ballot. The last time Arizona raised its gas tax was in 1991. According to a report released last month, Arizona needs about $20 billion just for building, widening, and maintaining freeways. The state needs an additional $30 billion on other road projects. The Arizona Department of Transportation says that the Highway Revenue Fund will take in just $1.4 billion this year. Imposing the gas tax would raise a $285 million for Arizona's highway fund. Campbell also wants to impose a $30 annual fee for drivers who propose insurance, which he says will raise an additional $115 million per year. As an alternative source of revenue, Governor Ducey has instead proposed turning Arizona's famous potholes into national monuments and performance art, then charging admission. Alex?
The Arizona Center for Innovation and Tech Parks Arizona are hosting a free screening of the documentary Generation Startup this Wednesday. The film follows the ups and downs of 6 college graduates, each trying to launch their own startups. After the screening, those in attendance will be treated to a Q&A hosted by a panel of local entrepreneurs and business experts. The event will be held at the Loft Cinema at 4:30 p.m. this Wednesday. Seating is limited, so be sure to RSVP at azcigenerationstartup.eventbrite.com.
Today, we bid adieu to the thousands of New Year's resolutions that vanished this weekend when Girl Scout cookies began flooding our streets. The Girl Scout cookie program is intended to teach young girls important life skills by forcing them to sell their goodies on street corners and not letting them keep any of the profits. Anyway, you better finish that box of Thin Mints before your wife sees. We here at 5 on 20 suggest cigarettes to cover up your cookie breath. Alex.
And now in national and international news, the guest list for Trump's inauguration isn't just light on celebrities, it's also light on elected officials. So far, over 20 House Democrats have announced that they will not be attending the inauguration this Friday. This list includes Southern Arizona's own Representative Raul Grijalva and civil rights icon John Lewis, the latest victim of Trump's Twitter rage. In fact, many representatives are citing these Trump tweets where he blamed Lewis for the crime-infested inner cities in his district as the reason they are skipping the event. This, coupled with the announcement that Toby Keith, and I'm serious, 3 doors down, will be playing the inauguration, was enough to inspire these representatives to find something better to do this Friday. Turns out, if you're a dick to everybody and then listen to shitty music, nobody wants to come to your party.
Speaking of Donald Trump, there's another chubby-faced psychopath who also inherited his wealth and influence from his father, who wants to make sure the world doesn't forget about him. Kim Jong-un claims North Korea could launch an intercontinental ballistic missile at any time. This comes just weeks before Kim Jong-un's New Year's message, where he announced his country was close to testing such a missile. So these claims are questionable at best. Let's not forget this is the same country that claimed to have discovered a unicorn layer in 2012. The missile in question would be capable of delivering a nuclear weapon to the U.S. mainland, or more accurately, toward the U.S. mainland before being shot out of the sky. North Korea's impotent threat is intended to make the international community rethink some of the sanctions placed on North Korea, like the sanctions that were supposed to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons in the first place. Don't try hard to track North Korean logic. Have I mentioned the unicorn layer, Alex?
The richest people in the world are gathering in Davos, Switzerland. Heads of state as well as other prominent politicians and thinkers are there for this year's World Economic Forum. They'll join the diverse group of mostly American white dudes. This assortment of monarchs and billionaires will spend a week discussing the major challenges facing our planet and coming up with potential solutions. Because who knows hard times like monarchs and billionaires? This is definitely not an excuse for rich people to get drunk and then go skiing in Switzerland.
Donald Trump is planning a trip to Reykjavik for a meeting with his best friend in the whole wide world, Vladimir Putin. Trump is hoping to ease mounting tensions between Russia and the Western world. Many are already comparing this potential meeting to the Reykjavik summit of 1986, when our last idiot TV star president met with Mikhail Gorbachev. That meeting led to the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. This meeting will probably lead to Trump trading Alaska for whatever dirt Putin has on him. Stay hydrated, Icelandic prostitutes. Trump may be requiring your service. To prepare for the visit, hotels in Reykjavik will cover their furniture with protective plastic wrap. Alex?
After over 130 years of beating animals for human amusement, the Ringling Brothers Circus will be hanging up their whips for good this year. The Ringling Brothers was a family-run operation from 1884 to 1967 when it was sold to Feld Entertainment. CEO Kenneth Feld points to the high operating costs and declining ticket sales as the reason for shutting down the circus. Over the past century, interest in circus performances have fallen as interest in basic decency has risen. In 2011, Feld Entertainment was hit with a $270,000 fine for alleged violations of the Animal Welfare Act. Continued pressure from animal rights groups led to the Ringling Brothers to pull elephants from the show last year, leading to a significant downturn in ticket sales. The circus will run 30 more shows across the country before shutting down for good in May.
Some of Trump's most vile behavior has influenced some of the more impersonable members of the Republican Party. Christopher Von Keyserling, a member of the Greenwich Representative Town Meeting Board in Connecticut, has been charged with fourth-degree sexual assault. The alleged incident took place on December 8th. Following a discussion of the current political climate with a woman he was well acquainted with, the discussion went sour after Von Keyserling called her a blood-sucking union employee. Von Keyserling followed the woman into her office where he allegedly grabbed her by the billy bush. Von Keyserling's attorney, Phil Russell, calls the allegations outrageous. Von Keyserling playfully gave a lady who he knew for 30 years a pinch, is what the accusation is. And somehow everybody's wringing their hands and carrying on that as a crime. And it just isn't. Russell apparently went to law school in one of those locker rooms I've heard so much about. This allegedly isn't the first time Von Keyserling has gotten handsy with his coworkers, but it is the first time he'll face charges for sexual assault. Alex?
Today marks Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or if you live in Biloxi, Mississippi, Great Americans Day. The city came under fire when the city's social media pages posted a message reading that, quote, municipal offices will be closed on Monday in observance of Great Americans Day, a state-named holiday. The messages have since been deleted, but not before those PC crazy liberals pointed out that even for Mississippi, this is really racist. Biloxi established the cringe-inducing policy back in 1985. It states that the third Monday in January would honor, quote, Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as other great Americans who made important contributions to the birth, growth, and evolution of this country. Biloxi officials denied charges of racism, claiming that the city sees no color, which explains why Biloxi residents are cool just swimming in beaches the color of raw sewage. City officials met this morning to discuss whether they would continue to use the name Great Americans Day. As of yet, no decision has been made. Officials did decide to change the month of February to Terrific American History Month.
And it looks like Donald Trump is getting into the seasonal tradition of being racist on MLK Day. Trump decided not to visit the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture today. His aides claim that the visit was not fully planned out due to scheduling issues. as Trump had a busy day of thinking of zingers to tweet about Alec Baldwin and criticizing the new season of The Apprentice. Trump says that he will visit the museum sometime after he assumes office, probably on a rainy Saturday when he's bored. The announcement of Trump's visit came on the same day when Trump caught fire for accusing Representative John Lewis of falsely complaining about the election. Trump accused Lewis of being big on talk but short on results. He seemed to be unaware that Lewis is one of the last remaining members of the original civil rights movement, who walked alongside Martin Luther King Jr. in Selma. While this was happening, a 21-year-old Donald Trump was getting a hand job in the laundry room of his father's country club. Alex?
The Trump administration denies that it is considering a role that would limit journalists' access to the White House. The proposal was first reported by Esquire magazine, which quoted 3 senior officials as saying that members of the press would no longer be able to gather in the White House press room. However, Trump's chief of staff, Reince Priebus, says that they are moving the press room to another space in order to accommodate more people. However, on Meet the Press, host Chuck Todd asked Priebus if the move would result in some media members being evicted from the space. Priebus replied that it hasn't yet been determined. This came on the same day that Trump's press secretary, Sean Spicer, announced that the Trump administration seeks to expand access to presidential briefings. The administration wants to include radio hosts and bloggers, which tend to be more favorable towards Trump. If the ruling goes through, then the biggest winner will certainly be Breitbart News, whose former editor-in-chief, Steve Bannon, is Trump's incoming chief strategist. The Associated Press reported that Breitbart was the only media publication given a reservation at Trump's news conference last Wednesday. The conference devolved into chaos when Trump accused a reporter from CNN of being fake news. In addition to Breitbart, the Trump administration is providing access to the Trump News Network, Trump Today, I Love Trump Media, and TrumpIsOurNewGod.com.
At least 26 are dead in a Brazilian prison riot lasting for 14 hours. The riot erupted Saturday night in Brazil's Alcatraz prison between rival gang members' house and separate wings. Prisoners cut off the electricity and one inmate temporarily escaped, but was later captured. This marks the 3rd deadly riot in Brazil this year, including one less than a month ago where almost 100 people died. Much of the problem comes from Brazil's overcrowded prisons, which are mostly run by the country's criminal gangs. The Alcatraz prison is meant to hold 620 inmates, but now holds over 1,000 inmates living in substandard conditions. Alex?
Diplomats met in Paris on Sunday to discuss issues of settlement expansion by Israel into Palestinian land. 70 diplomats from different countries signed a statement calling for Israel and Palestine to recommit to a 2-state solution. The statement was timed to coincide with the inauguration this weekend to send a message to the Trump administration. Trump has consistently said that he supports Israel with no reservations and supports moving the U.S. consulate to the contested city of Jerusalem. The statement included signatures from many Arab countries, along with the Islamic Council and the Arab League. Now, this is unique because Arab countries have typically held a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel position on the issue. With their inclusion, it looks as though the Arab world might be willing to unite over a 2-state solution, if only to oppose Trump, which frankly is fine too. While this sounds like welcome news, it's worth mentioning that neither Israel nor Palestine actually attended the meetings. So it's kind of like having an intervention for your Uncle Larry while he's out getting wasted at the bar. This was Alex Kack.
And Edgar Zotov.
For 5 on 20 News. Next up, Sean Sees Dead People.
Leonardo da Vinci said. The following men died today in history. They could also sculpt and paint. These stories are filled with doom and gloom, with cheerfulness. They ain't. Let's go. On this day in 1901, Swiss symbolist painter Arnold Böcklin died at the age of 73, most likely from stroke-related health problems. Here's an art history lesson. Symbolism was a late 19th century art movement of French, Russian, and Belgian origin in poetry and other arts. Symbolism in painting is characterized by mythological and dreamlike imagery. The symbols used by symbolism are not the familiar emblems of mainstream iconography, but intensely personal and private, obscure and ambiguous references, more a philosophy than an actual style of art. Symbolism in painting is influenced by contemporary Art Nouveau style. But I want to talk specifically about one of Böcklin's best-known paintings titled Isle of the Dead. There are many renditions of the ubiquitous painting of a strange island where strange things are occurring. Russian-American Lolita author Vladimir Nabokov alludes to the pervasiveness of the painting in his earlier novel Despair. He states that the painting could be found in every home in Berlin. Isle of the Dead depicts an isolated, rocky island in the middle of an endless expanse of dark water. A little rowboat is arriving at the island with a man at the oars, and another figure at the bow dressed in all white. There also looks to be a coffin in the boat. The island has several dark trees, which could be seen as cypress trees, also associated with cemeteries. Little doors and windows line the islands encompassing rock walls. Many observers have interpreted the oarsmen as a representation of the boatman Charon, who ferried souls to the underworld in Greek mythology. The water would then be the river Styx, and the white-clad passenger could be a recently deceased soul transiting to the afterlife. This painting is said to reference the English cemetery in Florence, Italy, where Böcklin spent much of his life. It also happens to be the burial location of Böcklin's deceased baby daughter, Maria. Böcklin was characteristically dark-sided, as seen in his self-portrait titled Portrait of Myself, where the figure of death can be seen by his side. On this day, in 1962, Croatian sculptor Ivan Mistrovic died at the age of 78. Mistrovic was also an architect and an avid anti-communism activist. He somewhat worked in Art Nouveau style as well and was an extremely honored sculptor, being the first artist of Croatian heritage to exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. August Rodin, the famous sculptor, even went so far as to say that Mistrovic was a better sculptor than he was. Think about that. The compliment afforded Mistrovic and his wife the ability to travel to international exhibitions. He eventually had to flee Croatia due to his anti-communist stance and ended up in the United States. He was able to return to Yugoslavia one more time before the time of his death, and this was to visit Cardinal Stepanek for a final time. This man happened to be a good friend of his and had previously helped Mistrovic flee the country. And at the request of various people from Croatia, 59 statues were sent from the United States to Yugoslavia, and in 1952, Mistrovic signed off of his Croatian estates to the people of Croatia, including more than 400 sculptures and numerous drawings. Upon his return, he vowed to his colleague painter Jozo Krčaković that he would not return to the country as long as the communists were in power. Like Böcklin, Mistrovic witnessed the death of a child. Two, in fact. His daughter Marta, who moved with him to the U.S., died in 1949 at the age of 24. And his son, Tvrtko, who was 39 when he died in 1961. Mistrovic suffered a minor stroke in 1960, which affected his eyesight. After creating 4 clay sculptures to memorialize his children, Mistrovic died in 1962 at the age of 79, in South Bend, Indiana, of all places. Communist Yugoslav authorities had originally promised the Mistrovic family that Ivan's remains could lie at the cathedrals of his hometown. Once his remains had arrived in Yugoslavia, the authorities went back on their word and did not allow this to take place. On this day, in 2009, American realist painter Andrew Wyeth died in his sleep at the age of 91. He is best known for the awe-inspiring Christina's World, a painting that depicts the backside of a girl in the grass staring longingly into the distance, where a little farm and an adjacent barn can be seen. The woman in the painting is Anna Christina Olsen. She is likely to have suffered from Charcot-Marie tooth disease, or CMT, a genetic polyneuropathy. Some of the symptoms include wasting of muscle tissue of the lower legs, and this can give rise to what is called stork leg, which is a term used to describe the symptoms of a leg becoming inverted or champagne bottle-like in appearance, which makes it difficult to walk. Wyeth was inspired to create the painting when he saw her crawling across a field while he was watching from a window in the house. What is there to say about someone who died peacefully in their sleep other than congratulations? May the time you spent on Earth be remembered more pleasantly than Christina Olsen's. She also died this month, in 1968. May her afterlife be painless and free of struggle. That's all I have today. See you next week. Sean Sees Dead People.